Good morning and welcome to Dr. Lamba's Awakening Calls new episode. Coronavirus has been a terror and the vaccine held some hope. I fully agree that there are a number of people who oppose vaccine. And I'm not very fond of the vaccine myself. But the way the federal government of Canada has botched up the hope of coronavirus sufferers is something shocking. Despite spending more money on this pandemic more than anybody else, Canada is lagging behind almost every other developed nation in vaccination numbers. No, let me be very frank. Not only the developed nations, but even the so called third world countries, they are much ahead of America, Britons, Israelis, along with those living in very tiny nations like Seychelles and Malta are much more likely to have received a vaccine shot than people living in Canada, where as of last week, only 2.4% have received even one shot of a COVID vaccine. And that is shocking. A country that prides itself on innovation, that prides itself on vaccine making, the first country to give penicillin, for example, has failed miserably this time. On the other side, country like India, which people were thinking is going to suffer badly, has not only been able to successfully implement and vaccinate a large number of people, but has requests from 92 countries to import vaccine from India. And it plans to export 24 million doses. And we find that Canada's Prime Minister had basically to beg the Indian Prime Minister for vaccine, which he graciously agreed to. But is it worthwhile? And we see as Canada scrambles with the rest of the world to secure vaccine, one major issue has been this country's utter lack of domestic production. With a huge knowledge base, with a greatly developed R&D, why is there lethargy and failure to produce a local, homegrown vaccine? It's an issue that will leave Canada at the mercy of vaccine producing countries, at least till mid 2022. If we compare the success of Israel or India, the world leaders of the vaccine race, that shows that the success of those countries has been because they paid more for the doses and agreed to share the health care. Other countries leaving Canada behind are using vaccines from China, Russia, and that have not even been considered for use here. The request for the Indian vaccine was delayed a lot. It should have been done long back. And some have approved candidates that Canada has purchased. And curiously, paradoxically, not yet approved. Now, this is a curious situation. You place an order for something which you have not approved, and you have approved something for which you don't place an order. What sort of muddled thinking it is? Shocking. The strikes against Canada included weak patent protection, price control that cut into companies' profits, and consequently, no local production. Just before the pandemic, the Liberal government moved to reduce the pharmaceutical prices, and that was roundly condemned by everybody. As a matter of fact, the government exempted COVID vaccine from the new process, but it remains in place for the other vaccines, other medicines and vaccines. Now, why should the producer not have a fear that if the government can force them to reduce prices for other medicines, they can also do the same for the corona vaccines? And the credibility of the government is not that high that they will take some assurance on its face value. Manufacturing vaccines in Canada is a challenge. And that challenge is there despite the fact that Canada has a highly developed R&D capability, personnel, and manpower, along with money. But the challenge is that here the major buyer is directly the federal government, not even the provincial governments. And with only one buyer, companies have to compete on price. So if there are five producers of the vaccine and they know there's only one buyer, they will either reduce the prices to the rock bottom, thereby possibly undermining the quality, or they shall indulge in corruption, bribing, bribing the people who matter. Secondly, the procurement process is so faulty that it does nothing to encourage companies to stay in Canada. They have been moving out. They don't want to do research in Canada now or to manufacture in Canada. All the Canadian policies have pushed drug prices down compared to the international prices. And then a large generic industry has been created, but it's not developing the way generic pharmaceuticals are developed, say, in India and China. The generic medicine produced in India is at one-tenth the cost of its production cost in Canada. So the buyers think it's easier, cheaper, economical to buy from India, from Malaysia, from Vietnam, from China. Why? What's so sacrosanct that you buy a generic medicine made in Canada when you can get the identical thing at one-tenth the price? And one-tenth the price, 90% reduction in price, is not something to be sneezed at. It's now becoming increasingly clear that as the world mobilizes to immunize itself against coronavirus, Canada is falling seriously behind. At a time when more than half of the Israelis have gotten the jab, more than 100 million have got in India, Canada has only 2% of the population vaccinated. And looking at economists, which always favors the liberal government, they said that virtually all of the Europe will be fully vaccinated by the end of the year. Canada can hope to have full vaccination by mid 22. That's almost a year and a couple of months from today. And one of the sharpest rebukes to Canada's pandemic performance yet has been that the federal government has tapped into a global vaccine sharing pool. Look, this pool was created by WHO to help the most undeveloped nations who can't do anything. And now Canada has requested that it be considered as a supplicant, as a requester, as a candidate for getting this charity. The next few months are going to reveal how much the failure and oversight has allowed this to happen. But there is something shocking when you, as a Canadian, are likely to be vaccinated much later than an American would be, a British would be, an Indian would be, a Chinese would be, and even a Serbian would be. What really happened was that the Canada seemed to have vaccination acquisition under control in the beginning, and they wanted to buy from Chinese pharma company CanSino that they had developed one of the first most promising vaccines. But can you believe it? President, Prime Minister Trudeau announced that they're going to buy the vaccine, and China says no, we will not sell it to you. What a shame! Now look at compare the attitude of Chinese, whom Trudeau is quoting all the time, flattering, and India, whom Trudeau is criticizing all the time, even interfering in their internal affairs. So Chinese refuse to give it. And right now, Canada is technically the world's most prolific holder of Canada 9 COVID-19 vaccine doses. The federal government has signed massive pre-orders for 6 approved vaccines. So, if all the vaccines come, every Canadian will get 9 doses, not 2 doses. What a waste of money. So they are playing ducks and drakes with the health of the people and with the financial resources. The collapse of the CanSino plan, Canada went into stupor. They started lingering. Until August 5, they didn't do anything. Then they placed order for Pfizer and Moderna. And both companies delivered a mere 11 million doses to Canada. That's it. 11 million doses means 5 million people could be vaccinated. And then they delayed all the deliveries. By contrast, by this time, 10 million people in UK got the vaccination. And that included 90% of over 75 years old people. This might be a good place to mention. I mean, you'll be amazed that Canada has led the world in per capita spending related to COVID-19. Number one in spending and last in doing something concrete. So, the collapse of CanSino plan, Canada poured $126 million and gave that grant to a biological manufacturing center. And this is under construction company, but they gave 126 million to them to manufacture vaccines. A company which is under construction, how could they produce millions of vaccines? Even with the money they have, they don't have the infrastructure. So they said, okay, they'll do it, but it will be 2020 at the earliest. Now, earliest doesn't mean it will be given. It can be 2023. And in December, it emerged that Ottawa had stuck to this plan, despite offers from a Montreal company to manufacture by the end of 2020. But maybe that was not in the good books of the federal government. So money goes to an under construction company and not to this. Despite the fact this Montreal company, Nuvax, runs a Health Canada approved facility, but no, they didn't get it. There is a Calgary company, Providence Therapeutics. They have a similar story, and they say that they have already developed a vaccine successfully. But Ottawa refused their plea to use it for human trials. So, as this pandemic shows, Canada has outsourced the vast quantities of its abilities. It has failed to promote the local production, and it looks as if we lack rudimentary ability. So, look at the same thing happened in the mass. Canada has the largest world supply of wood and paper fiber from where we can produce a face mask, but no, we did not do it. So we are importing face masks all the time. So vaccines or face masks, Canada is in a bad shape. Countries don't necessarily need domestic manufacturing. But if you have capability, why not? However, if you can't manufacture, you should have been far-sighted enough to place orders in time on reliable companies rather than giving money either to the Chinese, knowing that they are going to stab you in the back, or giving company money to a non-existing company. I wouldn't call it non-existing. I call it under construction. We cannot deliver it. So it's a whole thing is fraught with danger, danger to the health, danger to the fiscal health as well. As a matter of fact, if we look at it, what Israel has done or India has done, we can say that those are exemplary ways of fighting a pandemic. When it comes to mass vaccination, remember, your country can either get good at making shots or buying them. And Canada has failed in both. They could not manufacture good shots, they could not buy good shots in time. Blood is on the hands of Justin Trudeau. Will all the waters of Atlantic wash the blood, the pain, the misery from the guilty hands of the federal Liberal government? What they have done is unforgivable. Would you forgive them? Not me. Think about it. Thank you.